My name is Ethan Miller, and if you'd asked me a year ago what love looked like, I would have pointed at my wife, Julia. We were the couple everyone envied. Picture-perfect smiles in Instagram posts, anniversary trips, surprise gifts, long hugs in the kitchen. The kind of couple that made single people hopeful and unhappy couples jealous. But the thing about perfection? Most of the time, it's a lie. Scene 1. Setting the normal life. Ethan and Julia had been married for 6 years. They lived in a cozy suburban house in Austin, Texas. Ethan worked as a software engineer. Stable job, good money, predictable routine. Julia was a marketing manager for a well-known fitness brand. Lots of events, lots of travel, lots of freedom. Every morning was the same. Julia would rush out the door with a coffee in hand, kissing Ethan quickly, sometimes on the cheek, sometimes barely grazing his skin. "Love you, I'll text you," she'd say, already halfway out the door. And Ethan? He always smiled, because he believed every word she said. Scene 2. The first red flag. A Friday evening, Julia came home late, very late. Not 7 p.m. late, not 9 p.m. late. It was 1:43 a.m. when Ethan finally heard her key turn in the lock. He jumped up from the couch, relief flooding in his chest. But the moment he saw her, confusion replaced it. Her hair was messy, her lipstick smudged, her perfume too strong, as if she'd reapplied it recently. And her breath? It smelled like a cocktail, something fruity and expensive. "Where were you?" Ethan asked, trying to stay calm. Julia dropped her heels near the door and gave a tired smile. "Oh God, babe, I told you. We had a late campaign meeting. Drinks after. You know how these marketing people are. Work hard, party harder." Work meetings didn't end at 1:43 a.m. Ethan knew that. But he let it go. Because trust is easier than suspicion. Because love makes you blind. Because the alternative hurts more. Scene 3. The second red flag. It started small. Julia hiding her phone screen when notifications popped up, leaving the room to take calls, turning off her location sharing to save battery. Suddenly spending extra hours at the gym. But the worst? Her changing behavior in bed. She stopped initiating intimacy, stopped hugging him when she slept, stopped saying "love you" with meaning. When Ethan leaned in to kiss her one night, she turned away. "Let's just sleep. I'm exhausted," she muttered. Ethan felt a deep ache, one that didn't come from being rejected physically, but emotionally abandoned. Still, he blamed himself. Maybe he worked too much. Maybe he didn't tell her she was beautiful enough. Maybe he needed to be more spontaneous. Because when a marriage cracks, the loyal one always looks inward first. Scene 4. The business trip. One evening before dinner, Julia spoke casually while scrolling her phone. "I need to go to Dallas next weekend. Marketing summit. It's mandatory." Dallas, an hour's flight away. Ethan smiled. "I'll drive you to the airport." She froze, fingers stiffening around her phone. "No, you don't need to. I'll Uber. They might need me early for setup." A genuine trip wouldn't require such defensiveness. Something was wrong, but Ethan only nodded. Because if trust was a house, he was still patching cracks while Julia was setting fire to the basement. Scene 5. The coworker. One evening before dinner, Julia spoke casually while scrolling her phone. "I need to go to Dallas next weekend. Marketing summit. It's mandatory." Dallas, an hour's flight away. Ethan smiled. "I'll drive you to the airport." She froze, fingers stiffening around her phone. "No, I mean, uh, you don't need to. I'll Uber. They might need me early for setup." A genuine trip wouldn't require such defensiveness. Something was wrong, but Ethan only nodded. Because if trust was a house, he was still patching cracks while Julia was setting fire to the basement. Scene 6. The investigation begins. Saturday morning. Julia grabbed her luggage and kissed him goodbye. Quick. Emotionless. "I'll be back Sunday evening. Love you." Ethan watched her Uber pull away. Then he grabbed his keys. He wasn't going to Dallas. He wasn't going to follow her. He drove downtown to his friend Mark's office. Mark, the hacker-type friend every man secretly needs. Mark leaned back in his chair, smirking. "You sure you want this? Once you see something, you can't unsee it." Ethan nodded, jaw tight. "I need to know." Mark took Julia's phone number, typed rapidly, and within minutes, a screen appeared. Location: Dallas Luxury Suites, room 214. Device paired nearby: Noah Carter. Ethan felt the world tilt. Room, same hotel, same floor, same bed? Mark carefully asked, "What do you want to do, man?" Ethan clenched his fists so tightly his nails dug into his skin. "I want proof. Hard proof." Mark nodded and printed something. A digital keycard request form, a way to access the hotel room using hotel system loopholes. Mark handed Ethan a flash drive. Plugging this into the hotel receptionist's computer for 3 seconds would generate a spare card. Ethan took it, hands trembling. "I'll go tomorrow." Scene 7. Confrontation night. Sunday morning, Ethan drove to Dallas. He arrived at the hotel around noon and checked into a room under a fake name, courtesy of Mark. His plan was simple. Wait in his room, watch for Julia and Noah to return, then strike. Hours passed. He stared at the ceiling, picturing them together. He almost threw
up. Around 7 p.m., laughter echoed down the hallway. He recognized her voice. He recognized his voice. Ethan opened his door a crack, and there they were. Julia, wearing a dress Ethan had bought for her birthday. Noah, his hand on her lower back. The intimacy wasn't subtle. It was ownership. Ethan's vision blurred with rage. He waited until they entered their room. Then he stepped into the hallway and slid the key card into their door. Beep, click. The lock released. Ethan pushed the door open, and the scene he saw, it would haunt him forever. Julia was pinned against the wall, kissing Noah like she used to kiss Ethan, passionately, desperately, like she needed him to breathe. Ethan's heart died a little in that moment. He stepped inside. Julia froze, eyes wide, mouth open, lipstick smeared. "Ethan?" she whispered. Noah stumbled back. "What the hell?" Ethan didn't yell. He didn't cry. His voice was cold, dead. "Don't stop on my account." The silence was suffocating. Julia scrambled for excuses. "It's not what it looks like." "Really? Because it looks like my wife is kissing another man in a hotel room 200 miles away from home." Julia's lip trembled, but Ethan wasn't done. "How long?" he asked quietly. "Tell me the truth. How long have you been cheating on me?" Julia stared at the floor. 6 months. And that was when Ethan realized the marriage he thought he had ended a long time ago. Scene 8. The final break. No yelling, no fight. Just Ethan turning away, leaving the room, leaving his wife, leaving the life he thought was real. Julia called after him, "Ethan, wait, please." He didn't, because the man who walked into that hotel room was in love. The man who walked out was a stranger to her.
When someone you love betrays you, you don't just feel anger. You feel humiliation, shame, weakness. But when that pain hardens, it becomes power. Julia thought she ended our marriage that night in Dallas. She was wrong. She created a monster instead. Scene 1. A man who disappeared. Ethan drove home from Dallas in silence. No music, no tears. Just his hands gripping the wheel like he could strangle the steering column. Everything felt unreal. The home he once cherished now felt like a museum of lies. Every photo, a joke. Every memory, tainted. Ethan didn't sleep, didn't eat. He just sat at the dining table, staring into nothingness while rage simmered inside him like a boiling pot ready to explode. By Monday morning, he became a different man. Cold, focused, dangerous. If Julia could lie for 6 months, he could pretend for a lot longer. Scene 2. Welcome home, liar. Julia returned home late afternoon. She rushed inside, eyes filled with forced tears. "Ethan, please, can we talk?" He stood silently, not yelling, not crying, just watching her like a stranger who wandered into his home. Julia grabbed his hand. "It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. I love you." Ethan gently pulled his hand away. "Pack a bag. You're sleeping in the guest room." Julia froze, confused. He didn't scream. He didn't beg. He didn't crumble like she expected. This scared her more than any angry outburst could, because a calm man is a man planning something. Scene 3. The pretend reconciliation. Over the next week, Ethan faked a slow forgiveness. He forced a small smile at her jokes, let her cook his favorite meals, allowed her to cuddle up next to him on the couch. He acted like a husband trying to save a marriage. But behind the scenes, he was documenting everything. Bank statements, text messages, photos from the hotel system, Julia's location logs, social media posts she thought were private. He wasn't going to leave her. Not yet. He was going to disassemble her life piece by piece by piece. Julia, relieved by his apparent progress, started letting her guard down. Cheaters always do. Scene 4. The rehearsal dinner. A close friend of theirs, Claire, was getting married soon. Claire loved Ethan and Julia as a couple, thought they were relationship goals. She invited them to the rehearsal dinner. Julia got excited. She wanted to show everyone, "We're great again." Ethan agreed. He even brought her flowers on the way, beautiful white lilies. But Julia didn't know what white lilies symbolized. Death. Of love. Of trust. Of her old life. At the dinner, Julia clung to Ethan's arm, laughing, flirting, acting like the perfect wife. Everyone adored them. "Oh, you two are my inspiration," Claire giggled. Ethan squeezed Julia's hand and smiled. Inside, he was screaming. Scene 5. The funny thing about cheaters. Cheaters never stop at one lie. Halfway through the dinner, Julia went to the restroom. Her phone, carelessly left on the table, buzzed. A message from Noah Blue,
I miss you. When can I see you again? Ethan's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. Then another message. Did you tell him yet? So she was still lying, still sneaking around. That was when Ethan realized. She didn't regret cheating. She regretted getting caught. And that made the revenge sweeter. Scene 6. Expose the sinner to her church. As Julia giggled with bridesmaids in the corner, Ethan walked to Noah's contact and backed up every message to his own phone. Pictures, voice notes, even calendar entries, planned hotel meetups. Then Ethan did something bold. He dragged Claire aside and whispered, "I need to show you something important." He handed her the phone. Claire's eyes widened, her face drained of color. "Oh my God, Julia? With Noah? Are you okay?" Ethan smiled calmly. "I will be." She hugged him, swearing to keep the truth safe until the perfect moment. Ethan wasn't exposing Julia tonight. No, he was collecting an army for later. Scene 7. The first strike. Late that night, while Julia showered, Ethan sat in his office. He opened his email. 2. Julia's boss, Brian Reed. Subject: Employee conduct. Attachments: photos of Julia and Noah. Messages about fake business trips. Expense receipts showing misuse of company funds. He didn't write anything dramatic. Just one line. "I think you should know what your staff is doing on company time." Send. Julia walked in, wearing lingerie, trying to seduce forgiveness. Ethan stared her blankly. "I'm tired. Good night." Julia's confident smirk faltered. Her grip on the marriage was slipping, and she didn't even know how bad it would get. Scene 8. The fall begins. The next morning, Julia's phone rang. Her smile vanished. "Yes, Brian?" "No, that's not. I swear, it's a misunderstanding. Wait, please don't." Her voice cracked. She was suspended. Indefinitely. Tears streamed down her face as she dropped the phone. "They think I misused company funds. They think I took trips with a coworker. Ethan, help me!" Ethan stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Why would they think that? His voice was cold as steel. Julia sobbed harder. Ethan felt nothing. "Noah will fix it," she cried. At the sound of that name, Ethan's rage surged like a tidal wave, but he kept his expression calm. "Maybe you should ask him to help you pack." Julia froze. "What?" "You're moving out," Ethan said, finally unleashing the truth. "I'm filing for a divorce. And trust me, I will make sure you leave with nothing." Julia collapsed to her knees. "Ethan, please, I made a mistake. I need you." "You needed Noah, and now you have him." Scene 9. The last night under his roof. Julia slept in the guest room, crying softly. Ethan lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He wasn't done. Not even close. Noah still breathed freely. And that was unacceptable.
People think revenge is a single fiery moment. A shout, a breakup text, a viral post. They picture fireworks. They forget the long, surgical kind of vengeance. Precise, patient, designed to ruin everything you loved about a person until they're left with nothing but the memory of what used to be. That's what I set out to do. I didn't want Julia to suffer only. I wanted Noah to understand, in every whispered corner of his existence, why he should have stayed away. Scene 1. The plan. I folded a napkin and drew lines, not just for strategy, for targets. Noah, his job, his girlfriend, his family's reputation, his finances, his friends. Each was a domino. Take one down, and the rest would topple. I had 3 rules. Be invisible until the strike, use what they trusted as the weapon, make the fall public enough to humiliate, private enough to destroy respect. I started slow. I hired a private investigator to get everything I couldn't legally obtain. Hotel camera footage on days Noah claimed to be home. Receipts he thought were burned. A list of people who'd lent him money. I had Mark scrape what little he could from social accounts, and Claire, bless her, started to quietly gather friends who'd been suspicious of Noah. The first move was to break his personal life. Scene 2. Noah's girlfriend. Noah had a girlfriend, a smart, successful woman named Hannah. They'd been together 2 years. He presented himself as faithful to her. Hypocrisy is a sweet tile in a revenge mosaic. I had proof. Photos, hotel timestamps, voice messages. But I didn't send everything at once. That would be amateur hour. Instead, I started with breadcrumbs. I wrote to Hannah in the gentlest tone I could fabricate. Hi, Hannah. I'm Ethan. This is hard to write. I don't want to hurt you. You deserve to know that Noah may not be who he appears to be. I've attached a message that I thought you should see. If you want, I can tell you everything in person. Attachment: a screenshot of Noah's "I miss you" text. Taken out of context, but true. She replied with the kind of incredulity most people do at first. "This must be a joke," she wrote. I didn't argue. I let doubt creep in. 2 days later, Hannah found another message on Noah's phone when he left it unattended. A stupid thing he did in their comfort. She asked, he denied. I didn't take credit. I let the evidence speak. Suspicion opened a door. She peered through. By the week's end, she'd found my final breadcrumb. A blurred hotel photo with 2 silhouettes she thought looked like Noah and Julia. She confronted him. Noah's panic was delicious. He lied, he begged, he blamed stress at work. She told him to move out. That small private implosion made Noah vomit the first time he realized this could become public. Scene 3. The career strike. A man's career is often the most fragile thing he owns. It's public respect, the currency of modern life. Noah worked for a mid-sized construction firm. He managed contracts. He bragged about creative billing to friends, a phrase that left me waiting for the right moment. Mark and I compiled a file. Extense reports, weathered invoices, a paper trail showing Noah's insistence on routing personal expenses through his projects. I matched that with a pattern of business trips right around the times he had been with Julia. I wrote an email to his boss. Not a scream, a quiet, professional packet with dates, copies of receipts, and calendar entries, and the hotel footage I'd obtained through legal means and favors. The message was void of malice and full of evidence. To Noah's company, it read like an HR nightmare. They called a meeting. He lied. Then they boxed his desk. Public humiliation isn't just being fired. It's watching the good references drip away, colleagues avoiding eye contact, contractors giving you curt handshakes, your LinkedIn endorsements shrinking like a cooling fuse. Noah posted a vague message about stepping away to handle personal matters. His career was already a slow-motion car crash. Scene 4. The family thread. Noah's mother, Marianne, was active on social media. She posted family photos, church events, charity dinners, a small-town portrait of respectability. Reputation died easier than people think. Reputation could be poisoned with a whisper or a single well-timed screenshot. I sent a short private message to Marianne with a single line, "You should know." Attached, a blurb photo of Noah in the hotel hallway, hand in hand with Julia. No explanation. She called him first, then called me. "You don't understand what you've done," she cried. I didn't apologize. I told her, calmly, "I'm sorry you had to learn this the hard way. Please talk to your son." She begged me to let her speak with Noah without confronting the world. A compassionate parent's plea was a weak shield. I entertained her calls, then let them go unanswered. The rumor mill of a small social circle needs fuel to start. Parents fanning their children's secrets is oil poured on embers. I looped in one more friend, a pastor, who'd once asked Noah to speak at a youth event. The church's suggestion of moral failing created a pressure that was social as much as it was spiritual. From Marianne's perspective, the household was collapsing. Church whispers, neighbor looks, a son who came home late and smelled like perfume. This was not revenge for the sake of cruelty, it was correctional. If he could betray someone, let the weight of community correct him. Let him feel shame enough to change, or let him rot in it. Scene 5. A public moment. Cheats live in shadows. Their worst fear is daylight. So I scheduled some light. Claire agreed to let me speak with the wedding planner, an old contact of hers in the local press. I didn't want a sensational headline. I wanted a small, precise exposure that would reach the right eyes. Hannah, Noah's employer, Marianne's church group, and the neighborhood watch. At a coffee shop, I left a packet, printed photos, a timeline, and the words, "For their eyes only." Within days, gossip bubbled. A construction supervisor from Noah's client list called him and asked for clarification on invoices. Hannah posted a private message to a small group of friends asking if anyone had noticed something off, a post that would eventually leak. Marianne stopped attending choir practice. Noah's world narrowed. He began calling me, frantic and pleading. He offered threats, he offered money, he begged for this to stop. I listened, and then I recorded. Everyone needs to hear what they sound like when they're cornered. I saved his voice notes, begging, praying, making promises, and I played them back when I needed to remember why I'd started. Scene 6. The dangerous move. The last part of my plan was the sharpest, to make him fear not only for his reputation, but for his physical safety, a threat small enough to claim plausible deniability, large enough to fracture confidence. I didn't hurt him. I didn't threaten violence. I understood that cruelty that crosses into criminality becomes the thing that ruins the avenger. So I engineered a public humiliation that could feel like an accident. Noah had always driven the same route to a client site, a 2-lane road that hugged a shallow creek. There was one stretch where a guardrail was slightly corroded. On 2 occasions, contractors had complained to the county about the guardrail. On both occasions, the requests had been ignored. I called the county maintenance and, posing as a concerned citizen, requested an inspection of the guardrail. I scheduled it.
Day Noah had his big presentation, his last chance to salvage a contract. The maintenance team showed up mid-presentation, blocking traffic and bringing the situation into the open. Photos of Noah's halted truck and sweating client representatives made the rounds. Noah's argument, "I had to deal with an emergency," sounded weak. When the client postponed the project, they cited unreliable vendor management, and contracts think in black and white. Delays equal risk. He lost bids that week. The rumor of unreliable became sticky. I didn't need his car to crash. I only needed to show that he could be stopped, that his life included edges. Scene 7. Noah breaks, but not in the way I expected. Then something happened I hadn't planned. Noah cracked. But his crack wasn't the theatrical collapse I'd imagined. He didn't try to apologize publicly. He didn't climb into therapy and beg forgiveness on Instagram. Instead, his pride collapsed inward. He became silent and paranoid. He texted me once, "Who are you? Why are you doing this?" I answered, "Justice is personal for some people. You made it easy for me." His reply was 3 words, "You'll regret this." Threats amuse me. They're the sound of a scared animal trying to roar. He made a more dangerous mistake later. He called the one friend who believed him unconditionally, a man named Carter, and asked him to find out everything about Ethan. Carter was reckless, loud, and not discreet. That would be his undoing. Scene 8. The Reckoning with Carter. Carter trawled message boards, asked mutual friends, and drove by my house once hoping to spot me. He was the kind of guy who thought confrontation was honor. I let him get close. At a diner, Carter slipped. A name, an address, a scrap of overheard rumor. He mentioned Mark. He mentioned Claire. He mentioned the hotel. He was loud and sloppy enough that 2 men sitting nearby overheard him, leaned in, and later sent me a text with the details Carter had spilled. The more Carter tried to trace, the more breadcrumbs he left, and the more people like me gathered those breadcrumbs into curriculums. I called Carter and asked to meet. He came in, red-faced and defensive. I offered him coffee and a choice. Back off and never contact Ethan again, or I released to Hannah, Marianne, and Noah's employer every single file I'd been saving, including evidence of his involvement in local insurance skimming, a crime he'd been too proud to admit. Carter left white-faced. He promised to walk away. He didn't. 2 days later, the local police had a meeting with Carter regarding an old scam. The neat little world he'd built of being a helper collapsed around him. He lost credibility. Friends pulled away. Carter stopped calling Noah. Noah's access to dangerous, reckless friends was gone. He was more vulnerable than before. Scene 9. The Aftermath. 3 weeks in, Noah had lost his girlfriend, his job prospects were evaporating, his mother avoided his calls, and his last reckless friend was under investigation. He wandered into the house Julia used to call our place, and for the first time I saw him truly tired. Not angry, not scheming, just hollow. He came to my door once with wet eyes and an awkward attempt at apology. He didn't know how to say the words I wanted. I was wrong. I am sorry. I won't touch her again. Instead, he muttered excuses about loneliness and misunderstanding. I kept my door closed. I could have ended it there. But what mattered to me was that he felt the consequence. That every corner of the life he'd enjoyed because he played with other people's hearts would now hold a memory of that cost. The slow bleed of respect, money, and connection is worse than a single instant of public shame. It lasts. It teaches. It changes people.
There's a moment in every war where both sides realize it isn't a battle of fists or words anymore. It's a war of alibis, appearances, and the small things people believe about someone when the cameras aren't rolling. Once reputation is on the line, people start acting like actors. They memorize their lines, dress for sympathy, practice the right inflections. That's the landscape I chose to live in. I had already burned bridges behind Noah. Now it was time for Julia's world to tilt so slowly she'd convince herself she was standing still while the ground opened beneath her. Scene 1. The appearance of normal. Julia didn't cry every day. Grief has 2 faces. Sometimes it roars, and sometimes it practices composure. After the Dallas exposure and the suspension, she performed the latter. People like Julia understand optics, what to say on camera, what to post at midnight when the likes can cushion a lie. She started attending networking events, taking curated selfies that said, "I'm fine," and posting quotes about growth and new beginnings. Her mother called weekly with concern, disguised as advice. Her friends rallied. The insulation gave her confidence. That made her dangerous, because desperation hides behind composed smiles. And most revenge-minded people fail because they underestimate the armor of optics. I knew this, so I shifted targets. If Julia's rescue lay in public relations, I would flood those channels with contradictions. If she weaponized charm, I would weaponize facts. Scene 2. The gift of the lawyer. Divorce is a messy craft. It smells like coffee, sealed envelopes, and the quiet clatter of paperwork. It's where money, emotion, and legal definitions meet and try to eat each other alive. I spoke to a lawyer I trusted, one who specialized in high-conflict divorces. I didn't want a fistfight in court. I wanted a surgical approach that exploited corporate rules and personal greed. He advised me to inventory everything: joint accounts, credit cards, shared assets, her company's stock options, bonuses she'd concealed. I had already been collecting evidence. But the lawyer added something I hadn't considered: undeclared perks, the fringe benefits Julia had taken from her employer as work expenses for months while seeing Noah. Those perks could be reclaimed. They could also be framed as fraud, generating not just civil pain, but administrative discipline from her company. We filed discreet requests and subpoenas. The paperwork hit like paper knives in the night. Not loud, but precise. When HR opened their sealed envelopes, they found receipts missing approvals, travel reimbursements that didn't match calendar entries, and multiple client dinners in places that didn't exist on company maps. I wasn't asking for punishment. I was asking for consequence. Scene 3. The friends who fell away. Julia had friends who loved her for the version of her that belonged on a brand board. Some were genuine. Some were followers. In the last month, the difference between the two became painfully clear. I reached out to a handful of her closest wooed acquaintances, not with rage, but with a quiet ledger. I asked them questions that were tiny, but impossible to ignore, like, do you remember the night Julia was at X event? Did anyone see her after 11? And have you ever noticed expense reports that looked odd? People who live in the glow of another person's charm rarely keep receipts. But people who suspect something keep nights in their head like photographs. One by one, friends who'd been loyal began to hedge. They didn't come for me. They came to preserve themselves. Social pressure is a machete that cuts reputation from the top down. When the invitations to brunch and girls' nights started drying up, Julia blamed everything from stress to busy schedules. She couldn't see the tapestry I was weaving, a network of small disengagements that made her appear isolated in the very places she needed support. Scene 4. The media whisper. A rumor is a tide that gets bigger the more people step in to comment. I wanted that tide to lap at Julia's brand accounts. Not huge headlines, that would be melodrama and risked sympathy. Instead, a soft, persistent drip of media that made people curious and then quietly judge. I connected with a freelance journalist who had once covered corporate backroom stories. I didn't hand over everything. I gave enough. Snippets from HR, a timeline of Julia's client trips, and 2 signed witness statements from hotel staff confirming late-night guests during the months she was presumed to be at work. The journalist didn't publish an exposé. He ran a short social piece about corporate expense oddities, mentioning a mid-level marketing manager without naming names. The article landed in small industry newsletters and marketing chat groups. It was the kind of thing people forwarded in Slack channels and said, That multiplied. Julia felt the pressure, but tried to treat it like static. Her PR consultant recommended a statement about personal matters. She practiced the phrase until she could say it without breaking rhythm. People accepted curated grief. They had to, because which of us wanted to believe our friends were monsters? Scene 5. The friends who revealed too much. Not everyone is cautious. There's always someone who wants the last word, or the juicy secret, and will trade their loyalty for attention. Claire still reeling from her own wedding stress, told me that she had overheard Julia on 2 separate occasions complaining about having to pay back the company and Noah helping with the invoices. She'd laughed it off at the time. That laugh became a document. I used those words to craft a masterstroke, an audit request to Julia's employer with Claire's testimony attached. No one expected a co-worker's dinner room gossip to be used in a legal proceeding. But in divorce and corporate life, details are a currency. The company had to act. The board called a meeting. Julia received an official notice, a formal internal probe. Her PR consultant advised silence. Her mother advised prayer. Her friends advised discretion. None of them could advise on the cold calculus of a private man who kept receipts. Scene 6. The gifted humiliation. People underestimate the cruelty of losing small things. A membership card revoked. A position on a committee taken away. A name removed from a charity gala program. Big scandals are loud. The slow humiliation is quieter and more poisonous. I reached out to a charity that had scheduled Julia to speak about female leadership in marketing. They had promoted her name. I called and politely explained that recent developments might make her message a distraction. I framed it as compassion, both for the charity and for Julia. They replaced her with another speaker, leaving her with a cancellation notice and an empty slot. She posted a picture of the replaced banner anyway, looking forward to next time. The comment section was a sprinkler of supportive one-liners. But the sponsors had already received emails. The donors who liked to associate with reputable faces weren't happy. It was another small withdrawal of status. Status is a house of cards, and each removed card makes the rest look less stable. Scene 7. Julia strikes back. A woman with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous kind, because she doesn't need to fear the consequence. Julia had discovered parts of my plan, she'd seen notices and heard the heat. She assembled a counterattack that was furious and clever. She hired a crisis PR firm. She staged a family photo day, posted sentimental videos with her mother, and made a donation to the very charity she'd been pulled from. A public gesture meant to signal generosity. She called Hannah's friends and told a story about how she had been mentally unwell and vulnerable, subtly shifting blame toward me without ever naming me. She also began legal maneuvers of her own, a claim that my involvement in Noah's downfall was harassment. Her lawyer sent me a cease and desist letter, a thinly veiled attempt to make me look like a stalker rather than a betrayed husband. The letter used words like disturbance of privacy and emotional distress, but it also revealed she was worried. Why else would you use lawyers to send a bureaucratic threat if you weren't flinching inside? I smiled when the envelope arrived. If she wanted to make this legal, the discovery process would help me. If she wanted to call me a stalker, court papers would require her to document things she'd prefer hidden. I replied carefully through my lawyer. We didn't scream. We filed a polite, firm response, including a preliminary inventory of her expense reports, the hotel timestamps, and copies of the messages she'd sent to Noah. Our tone was professional, the kind that reads cold on paper and colder in the eyes of a jury. When her lawyer replied with threats, my attorney filed for preservation of records. The judge signed an order requiring both sides to produce relevant documents: Julia's HR file, the internal PR memos, her credit card statements, all of it had to be turned over under oath. This is where most cheaters make mistakes. In the rush to protect an image, they forget how easy it is to misplace a receipt, to let a personal email sit in a work inbox, or to have a travel expense that doesn't match a calendar entry. Under the clinical light of discovery, inconsistencies widen into gashes. Her panic became visible. She called her boss. She called her mother. She called Noah. Noah, predictably, offered platitudes and vague promises, but he couldn't stand in paperwork.
He couldn't fix dates. He couldn't edit receipts. He was a witness whose memory now mattered in a legal proceeding. Scene 9. The Small Victories. 2 months into the legal back and forth, things shifted. HR placed Julia on extended leave pending the investigation. Her stock options were frozen temporarily pending review. Friends who feared being involved in a court case started distancing themselves. Sponsors sent discreet notes that we're monitoring the situation. I didn't dance on her ruin. I simply documented it and waited for the court to do its work. Revenge, properly executed, leaves little to chance. It lets institutions, which people depend on for protection, do the heavy lifting. One night, I received a message from a familiar source, Hannah. She sent a photo, Julia, at a boutique hotel bar, with a receipt that had been marked as a company dinner. The small, steady drip had become a trickle. The trickle would become a flood. Ending. Voiceover. By now, both of them knew what it felt like to be watched. They had felt the cold brush of social removal and the slow legal tightening that leaves people rearranging their lives to fit new rules. But this wasn't the end. The law is a blunt instrument. It strips and sorts, but it doesn't always heal. The emotional part of this revenge was still mine to finish. Julia's final move would be desperate, to humiliate me the way she thought I deserved, to take my dignity in the public square. She would try, in anger and vanity, to be the martyr. I had prepared for that. I'd built scaffolding, the small, unforgiving truths that could hold their ground under pressure. Next episode would be the biggest, courtrooms, a live deposition, and the unraveling moment when reputations are either reborn or buried. And because war has the habit of opening other doors, there would be a final twist neither of them would see coming. Because when you learn to survive betrayal, you also learn how to make truth impossible to ignore.
Some wars don't end with a bang. They end when one side finally realizes the universe is keeping score. And justice, real justice, doesn't shout. It waits for the perfect moment to speak. This is the end, the final play. And when the judge's gavel drops, Julia's world will collapse. Scene 1. Depositions. 4 months before the final hearing. The law is slow on purpose. It gives you time to dread what's coming. Julia arrived at the deposition wearing designer armor, beige silk blouse, tailored blazer, that corporate confidence she wore like perfume. Her attorney sat beside her, trying to look calm, but the folder in front of him was thin, very thin, because lies shrink when exposed to sunlight. My lawyer, Mr. Carver, started simple. Ms. Taylor, on April 17th, were you on a client development trip? Julia cleared her throat. Yes, I was meeting with a vendor. Carver slid a hotel receipt forward, time-stamped 11:46 p.m. At a rooftop bar? Julia blinked. A pause, her pulse visible in her neck. I was entertaining a potential partner. Carver slid another paper across the table. A witness affidavit from hotel staff. Was the vendor's name Noah Dalton? Her attorney interrupted. We object to relevance. Carver smiled like he expected it. We're establishing misuse of marital funds and company property. Julia's silence was louder than any objection. Next came expense reports, all tied to business meetings that just so happened to align with Noah's locations. Next came text messages, nights she claimed she was working late but was actually with Noah. Then came photos, timestamps matching the receipts. When the lunch break came, Julia didn't eat. She stared at the table as if the wood grain was rewriting her fate. She looked scared for the first time. Good. Scene 2. HR's final straw. 2 weeks later, her company's board called an emergency meeting. A woman like Julia knows corporate language like a second tongue, but that day she didn't understand a single word. Terms like misconduct, breach of trust, pending termination, and liability exposure hit like invisible punches. Her keycard was disabled within the hour. Someone else escorted her out. Her nameplate came off the wall. Her inbox got reassigned. She called Noah sobbing, but he answered on speaker with someone else in the room. He didn't say her name. He said, "I can't be connected to this. Don't call me again." Her gasp, the sound of someone realizing they backed the wrong future. Noah walked away to protect himself. Julia was alone in the storm she created. Scene 3. A public shame. The industry newsletter published a follow-up. This time, they named her. Marketing manager under investigation for misuse of funds. Her comment section turned from hearts to pitchforks. Friends unfollowed, influencer collaborators ghosted, sponsors removed her face from their websites. No one calls you queen when the crown falls off. Her mother begged her to fix it, but Julia didn't know which hole to plug first, the legal one, the social one, or the emotional one. Scene 4. Courtroom day. The courtroom was cold, intentionally dull, stripped of glamour. There were no filters here. Reality is always uglier without good lighting. Julia entered wearing black, like she was attending her own funeral. Noah was not by her side. I sat calmly, emotionless. The villain in her mind, the survivor in reality. Judge Ramirez reviewed the evidence. Expense reports, relationship timelines, her messages to Noah confirming they planned trips with joint funds and corporate reimbursements. Her attorney tried one final, pathetic angle. "Your Honor, my client was experiencing emotional distress." The judge snapped, "Emotional distress does not justify fraud." Then came the ruling. Marital assets will be divided 70-30 in Mr. Cole's favor due to financial misconduct. Ms. Taylor is responsible for repayment of disputed funds totaling $48,000. Ms. Taylor will cover Mr. Cole's legal fees. Julia swayed like she might pass out. The judge wasn't done. Custody of the dog Milo awarded solely to Mr. Cole. The gasp she let out wasn't about money. It was grief. Real, primal grief. Milo had been her emotional trophy. Now he walked out with me, tail wagging, unaware of symbolism. Her attorney placed a hand on her shoulder. She shrugged it off violently. Her life, undone. Scene 5. The final confrontation. Outside the courthouse, Julia tried to compose herself, but her composure was a shattered mirror, cutting her everywhere. She stormed towards me. "You destroyed my life." I turned, calm. "No, Julia. You destroyed mine. I just stopped pretending it didn't hurt." Tears streamed down her face. "I loved you." I stepped closer, voice low but sharp. "You loved attention. You loved status. You loved being desired. And you threw away loyalty, the only love that matters." She shook her head, denial dripping from every movement. "I can fix this. I can—" "Julia, it's already fixed." The taxi she'd called arrived. But Noah wasn't in the seat beside her. No one was. She looked small. That was the real punishment. Revenge isn't loud. It's quiet. It's watching the person who tried to shatter you break themselves instead. Scene 6. A new chapter. Months passed. I found a new apartment. Sunlight everywhere, windows wide open. Not hiding anymore. Milo slept by my feet at night. I joined a volunteer program teaching music at a community center. My laughter returned, without feeling borrowed. Healing wasn't a straight line, but it moved forward. One day I passed by a coffee shop and saw a familiar figure working behind the counter. Julia. Hair tied back, uniform, apron, eyes hollow. She looked up. Recognition hit. Shame followed. I nodded. A simple gesture. Not pity, acknowledgement. Her past had caught up to her. Her future now demanded humility. She looked away first. I walked out, letting the bell above the door ring her new reality. Ending. Voiceover. Sometimes revenge isn't about ruining someone with fire and fury. Sometimes it's about letting the truth bleed out slowly. Julia lost her job, her reputation, her lover, her status, her pride, her illusions. I didn't destroy her. I simply stopped saving her. And when you stop saving a person who built their identity on lies, they drown in the truth.